So the hype around Activision Blizzard now being a part of Xbox is still in full swing. And I want to make a video, going over some more stuff I didn't talk about last time, and as the situation on the ground has changed. So basically, first of all, I know a lot of people are saying, wow, this means that Xbox just won the whole console generation, and that's not quite the case, although this is a very huge case. If you look at the statistics, I believe Xbox is currently the third largest gaming company, right? Now, again, they may have more publishers and they may have more games themselves, but I believe if you look at the statistics, PlayStation is still a more successful gaming company, right? That's just the way it is. That's not to say that, oh, well, Microsoft just wasted its money. It's not, because this pushed them up to third best. But, again, so Xbox did not win just yet, right? But I am definitely going to say that I disagree with a lot of people saying, well, Sony doesn't need to respond to this with a big buy if they are number one. That's not the case. You see, we've had arrogant Sony before, right? And we don't want it. But if Sony doesn't buy a big publisher, and Xbox keeps buying big publishers, then, like I've said in my last video, it don't matter how good Sony's games are, they will be outgunned, right? Xbox will just have so many more that it won't even matter how good Sony's games are. And do I think Xbox's games will ever get to that AAA quality that Sony has? Probably not, right? Sony just has so much talent behind their developers that their games just come out that much better. But Xbox will just end up having so many more that it won't even matter. So I think Sony needs to get over its reluctance and buy a couple publishers. Now, on to the main thing I wanted to talk about. What publishers could they buy? I touched on this briefly in the last one, but I want to go over it in a bit more detail. So I see everyone clamoring, buy Take-Two Interactive. And I want to go over a couple reasons, well, actually just one reason why that won't happen. Sony doesn't have the money for that, right? The thing is, Sony is worth about $180 billion, I believe. That is the market value, I believe. Microsoft is over $2 trillion. Sony cannot afford to get baited into a spending war with a $2 trillion company like Microsoft. It's not going to end well. Sony's got to be careful. Now again, does Sony have the money to buy Take-Two? Sony does. The PlayStation division does not have the money to buy Take-Two Interactive. As nice as that would be, it won't happen. Take-Two is valued, after the most recent acquisition, at nearly $29 billion, I want to say. I want to say there's somewhere around $29, $28 billion. I believe the PlayStation division's acquisition budget is somewhere in the ballpark of $25 billion. That's a little over. Now again, when a company is worth $28 billion, you need to make an offer substantially higher, right? So I would say Sony's got to go to them and make them an offer for almost $40 billion. Sony's not doing that, right? And Sony doesn't have a real close working relationship with Take-Two. So I don't think it's a good idea to go for Take-Two. Would it benefit when the inevitable GTA 6 does come out as an exclusive? Yes, it would. But again, Sony does not have the funds to go after Take-Two like that. I've seen people say, buy EA. That's another huge publisher. I wouldn't buy EA, and again, they don't have the money to buy EA. EA is valued over $30 billion right now, I think, so they'd have to make an offer close to $50 billion. There's no way that they can go and buy EA. They won't. They will not do it at all. Would it be worth the money anyways? Probably not. EA doesn't make good stuff anymore. Some people say go buy Ubisoft. I'm pretty sure Sony would have the money to buy Ubisoft, I think. I'm not sure. I don't know exactly what Ubisoft's market value is. I can look that up right now, actually, while I talk about the other publishers. So, while I'm looking that up, the main ones I see thrown around a lot now is Square Enix and Capcom. And for both of these, okay, I've got Ubisoft right here. So Ubisoft is around $7 billion. Sony has the money to buy them, but it's not worth it. Let's see, Bandai Namco. Sony might have the money, but it's not worth it. Okay, and that just leaves the ones that I know about. Okay, so the main three I see thrown around is Konami, Square Enix, and Capcom. And to me, there are two of these that jump out at me as being the most likely to be bought out. Two of them that just seem ripe for the picking, and that would work well with Sony's, marketing. Capcom and Square Enix. I would go for Square Enix here. Square Enix is a bigger publisher. They've had a much closer relationship with Sony. Square Enix, I think, is the go-to buy, right? Capcom, great buy. Not as close with Sony, though. I could see that being after that. I think over the next couple of years, Sony is going to come out with 2 publisher acquisitions. I think they're going to come out with 2 of them. And I don't think, we're going to get a real, shock to the system, Sony just bought, Bandai Namco or something like that. I don't think so. But I think Square Enix is going to be their go-to, right? That's the cash cow. They hit Square Enix, they get a big win, right? And even then, Square Enix and Capcom won't be more games than Bethesda and Activision. But the thing is, with those under Sony's PlayStation Studios, we know how much the quality increases when games get under that. So then you have a lot more games, a lot better games. And then even if Xbox was to buy EA or Ubisoft, at that point, let's say Sony did eventually buy Konami, then at that point you have those IPs as well. Sony is very much quality, not quantity. But even still, they need to get over it and buy a couple publishers this time. So, and the last one or a couple more I see. I've touched upon all this in my last one. I just wanted to go over more of it. I still see people clamoring for Sony to buy Konami, and I can't fathom it. I just can't. Konami hasn't made an actual game with its IPs in the last 7 years, right? Konami just doesn't do anything. And people, when you say that, people say, well, Konami's worth $6 billion, so obviously they're making something. Yeah, medical equipment, idiot. Konami makes a lot of medical equipment. You know that, right? Of course you did. Yeah, of course you did. I don't even need to ask. Of course, the people who are screaming at other people that are idiots for saying Konami doesn't do these things are idiots. Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. God, I hate those people. But anyways, Konami is not the buy to go with, because yes, Konami has some really, really popular IPs. They have Metal Gear, Silent Hills, Castlevania, and more. But the thing is, would these IPs really be better than getting the entire Final Fantasy series under exclusivity? Than getting Nier under exclusivity? Kingdom Hearts? The inevitable Chrono remake or whatever they do for that? You have to understand, by getting Square Enix, they also get rights, I believe, to almost every single Marvel character. They get the video game rights to almost every single one, because Square Enix has a lot of them. They have the rights to the Avengers, they have the rights to the Guardians, they have a lot. So, this is the move to make. I think that without a doubt, Sony needs to really consider getting Square Enix. And Capcom is good too, right? Capcom has Resident Evil, they have Devil May Cry, and they have MVC. They have so many. They have Dragon's Dogma. Capcom's got some really big names too, but not quite like Square Enix. Square Enix has some massive names, and Final Fantasy is coming out with new games all the time. I mean, currently we have Final Fantasy Origin on the horizon. Final Fantasy 16 might even follow behind this year. And then next year, or early 2024, we have 7 Remake Part 2, just over the horizon, just waiting. And I would bet that by the time when 16 gets close to release, 17 will already be in the concept stage. So, no doubt in my mind, Final Fantasy is the best one to go with. And 14 is all the time getting stuff, and will eventually probably get more expansions, if I had to guess. I don't think they're going to just let 14 die. I don't think so. But yeah, that's not it actually. I see people saying Sony should buy Sega, and Sega's gotten kind of close with Microsoft lately. I know people say like Persona is published by Sega, so clearly there is a relationship there, and yeah, there is. But the thing is, the mainline Personas have always kind of been PlayStation exclusive. That's not really a huge point to bring up. Sega's very close with Microsoft. If anybody's going to buy Sega, I put my money on them. And I would hate to lose Persona. Lord knows I would. And I think Sega would too. They would not restrict Persona to Xbox because, like, as I brought up before, one of the best-selling JRPGs of the last generation, Final Fantasy 15, sold less than 1 million copies on Xbox. Out of around 10 million copies sold, 8.1 were on PlayStation, over 1 million were on Steam, the rest on Xbox. You really think Persona's going to sell that much better on Xbox? 0% chance. If they buy Sega and then keep Persona on Xbox, that game's not even going to break even. It's not. Persona's going to make zero money on the Xbox market. And that's another thing you have to consider, because everybody's saying, oh, well now Xbox should buy Square Enix or Capcom before Sony could get to them. That's not going to happen, because these companies do not have a market. Capcom does more than Square Enix for sure, but if Square Enix was willing to sell to Microsoft, that would be the most incompetent decision I've ever seen in my life. Because again, Final Fantasy, there's no market there. There's simply not. Kingdom Hearts, definitely not. No way, right? And again, there'll be people say, well, I buy these games up here, and yes, you're in a very small minority that does. Because again, you have to take into account these numbers. About 8.1 million copies of Final Fantasy 15 on PlayStation versus less than 1 million on Xbox. That is a staggering number. That is just, it is unbelievable, right? So compare that to every single one of their games. Let's say they buy Square Enix, right? Final Fantasy 17 comes out as an Xbox exclusive, sells like 800,000 copies in 5 years. That game's not going to break even. It is not going to break even. So again, this is a terrible, terrible decision if Square was to sell to them. Now again, I know they won't, right? Sega is very different, right? Sega has very much been working towards Xbox, right? PSO2 being a main one. Microsoft has been steadily funding some of Sega's stuff, so I think that's a lot less of a big deal, but no way Square Enix and Capcom are going to Xbox. 0% chance. As for if Xbox could buy Konami, they could, in theory, but I don't think they will. And I saw a couple people saying, well, what if Sony bought Nintendo? And then again, Nintendo is valued around $60 to $65 billion, I believe. We don't need to go over this again. Sony doesn't have that kind of money. The only way that would work is if they did a merger, kind of like how Enix and Squaresoft merged into Square Enix. If they did something similar to that, yeah, that would work. And I think that would even be great. They share a market in some ways, while the Switch market is entirely different from the Xbox market. I think it would be great. It would work really well, but I don't think it would happen, at least not for a while. Which we know Sony used to be close with them, but I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in it and say probably not. I don't think we'll see a Nintendo-Sony merger for a while. So that's about everything I wanted to go over. I just wanted to touch on a couple more things, give a bit more context. This was a big win for Xbox, no doubt. This really put Sony on the back step. Sony's got to do something. Sony's got to do it soon. And we know that they will, because, this is 2 massive acquisitions in a row, and obviously the competition isn't going to just sit there, right? So, Sony's got to buy something, right? And then people are saying, like, well, I don't think Phil is really concerned with PlayStation. If Phil wasn't concerned with PlayStation, he wouldn't have had Xbox buy Activision and Bethesda. He wouldn't have done that, right? This was a result of Sony doing very, very well in the last generation. Sony beating the dog piss out of Xbox in the last generation, right? It's no secret. Sony won the Xbox One PS4 generation, hands down, no arguments. There's nothing you can say against it, right? They won that generation. But in this generation, Xbox is making moves, no doubt. Now, again, I know people, and I see people on Twitter saying, well, this means that the next Call of Duty will be exclusive, or that everything from now on for them will be exclusive. This deal is going to take another year to close out. So what I would say, this year's Call of Duty will still release on PlayStation. Next year's Call of Duty will not. Around this time next year, the deal will close. Activision will be a part of Microsoft, and I know a lot of people are saying, well, I don't think that they are going to make it Xbox exclusive. Phil said he doesn't want to break up the fan base, and I respect Phil Spencer a lot. All right, I may be a PlayStation guy, as you can tell from the 7 remake footage. I may be a PlayStation guy, but I do respect Phil. Right? Phil knows, he's got his finger on the pulse of gaming. He knows what's going on. But I'm gonna go ahead and call Phil on this one, because you don't spend $70 billion on a publisher to not make them exclusive, right? At that point, what was the point in you buying them? Just do what Sony does. Get third-party exclusives, right? So there's no way that's true. You don't spend $70 billion. That way your competition can still play the game. It's not how that works. Because if Sony spends about $11 or $12 billion on Square Enix, there's no way those games are ever coming to Xbox. No way. And some of them already aren't. You know, 7 Remake is never coming to Xbox, probably. 16 will probably be the exact same way. Forspoken, I don't know, it's up in the air. Depends how quick Sony buys them. Like, very, very much so. That's how Sony would do this. Capcom would do the same. They would do the same thing with Capcom. Devil May Cry would never go to Xbox. Resident Evil would never go. Dragon's Dogma. Marvel vs. Capcom. I don't even know if Marvel vs. Capcom is on Xbox, but still, it would never go over there. And those are even smaller purchases. I think Square would take probably around 13 billion. Capcom would take somewhere in the ballpark of 10 or 11 billion. So Sony could, in theory, buy both of those within their acquisition budget. They could, in theory, buy both Capcom and Square Enix. I wouldn't even put it past them. I would say, like, late this year, it's entirely possible. Like, middle of this year, they announce, you know, welcome to the family, Square Enix. I know they should say that for Capcom, because Resident Evil 7, welcome to the family, son, haha. But anyways, then this time next year, they announce they've acquired Capcom, right? Imagine that. That's pretty nuts. I think Sony could do that. I would say Sony should do that. Put a bunch of money into their acquisitions, because it's time for Sony to expand, right? They keep buying all these really small indies they work with, and that's great. No, I'm happy for them. But you need to buy publishers, Sony. I know Sony's reluctant to do it, but you need to, right? Because again, if you're going to get outgunned, what's the point in you buying these smaller studios? There is none. Because who publishes these smaller studios' games? The publishers. Buy the publishers. Jesus. But anyways, that'll do. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. You think I'm right on this? Think I'm on base? Think I'm off base? Do you think Xbox didn't strike a huge blow on this? What do you think? I see no way you can say that. This was a huge win for Xbox. Now again, it does come down to I can play all this on my PC. Doesn't really matter to me, but still. Jeez. Wow. This went on for a lot longer than I thought. 18.5 minutes. Jesus Christ. Anyways, that'll do it. My name is Carmen, but I go by Ellis on YouTube, and yeah. Y'all take it easy.